A few days ago, a case hit my desk. The file's name? The Ken and Barbie killers. I had never heard of something so silly, but the moment I opened the file, my whole world was set ablaze. This case was Canada's biggest murder case, and the people involved, they weren't some skilled mercenaries, no, but a couple. Paul Benardo and Carla Homoka, aka Ken and Barbie killers. However, I found out that there's more to the story than meets the eye. We're talking two hidden victims, and one of them is Carla Homoka's sister. But in order for us to make sense of this information, we need to go back to the beginning. Hi, my name is Inspector Truman, and I make true crime and business conspiracy videos, so consider subscribing, and welcome to The Jeff Truman Show. Paul Benardo, aka Ken. And last but certainly not least, Carla Homoka, aka Barbie. This story starts off with the young Carla Homoka. Carla Homoka, born May 4th, 1970, and she grew up in a normal two-parent household in the suburbs of St. Catharines, Canada. She was the oldest of three sisters. Her father, well, he was a lamb salesman at the local flea market, and her mother was an administrator at St. Catharines Hospital. At school, Carla was one of the popular kids. She was your typical blue-eyed, beautiful, enthusiastic, bubbly girl that every girl wanted to be like, and every young teenage boy wanted to be with. At the age of 15, Carla started to work at a local pet center in St. Catharines. She loved animals, and due to that fact, she wanted to be a vet when she grew up. However, Carla always dreamt of one day meeting her prince in shining armor, a man who would sweep her off her feet, carry her to their castle in the sky. Little did she know that she would get into an entanglement with the devil himself. Allow me to introduce you to Paul Benardo, and the last piece to this match made in hell.
Well, actually here, I think that most people here are afraid to get photographed.
You see, right off the bat, Paul was a troubled child. Born August 27th, 1964. Paul grew up in a very dysfunctional household where his parents were sleeping in separate rooms. At the age of 16, his mother revealed to him that he was a bastard child, that he was a result of an extramarital affair, and the man who raised him, well, he wasn't his real father. Growing up, Paul was what is known as a peeping Tom, a person who derives sexual pleasure from secretly watching people undress or engaging in sexual activity. And he was caught several times staring at the neighbor's window, and this preempted parents around the neighborhood to deny their children any interaction with the young Paul Benardo. He tried to have a normal childhood, joining the Boy Scouts and even becoming a counselor. But as he grew older, his sexual needs became vicious. For example, he started beating up his girlfriends, humiliating them. And this made him sexually sadistic, which is infliction of physical or psychological suffering, for example, humiliation and terror, on another person to stimulate sexual excitement and orgasm. Even though he was very flamboyant, a handsome man, a very charming individual, most women, well, they would reject him until he met Carla. So on one hand, we have a successful, good-looking, charming individual by the name of Paul. And on the other hand, we have this 17-year-old looking for a successful, older, good-looking, charming individual by the name of Carla. Your question is, how did they meet? Well, let me set the scene for you. It's October 1987. 17-year-old Carla Homoka and her work friends are at a convention in Scarborough, Toronto. They got to the hotel and Carla and a friend of similar age decided to slip down to the bar area. That's where she met him, Paul. Paul was also at a different convention taking place in the same hotel, so they made eye contact, approached each other, had a few drinks, and then went up to Paul's room. And the rest, oh, the rest is history, my friend.
This suspect is wanted for a series of sexual assaults. 2 last May and 1 just last week. And police say his attacks always follow the same pattern.
Between May and December of 1987, a series of sexual assaults happened in Scarborough. 6 to be exact. Between April and May of 1988, 3 sexual assaults were filed. October to December of 1988, another 4 sexual assaults were filed. They were all from the same person dubbed the Scarborough. I later learned that he had a type: small, young, fragile women. And he had a tendency to keep tabs on his victims and study how they walked, how they talked, where they were, what they read. In short, he stalked them, just like a methodical hunter would. And he would wait for the right time, and boom, he would strike his victims from the back with the knife so they couldn't identify him. It's said that he would collect trophies after he was done sexually assaulting these women, which consisted of pubic hair, head hair, and also their IDs, where he would threaten to find them if they ever said a word.
The poster is a puzzle. It has to be. None of the victims has had a good look at her attacker, a man who grabs her from behind with a knife.
Metro Police have a team of investigators working full-time on this case.
However, one day, on the 26th of May 1990, a woman was attacked by the so-called Scarborough, and she had a good look at the man, and that fueled a manhunt like no other in Toronto. The woman sat down with police sketch artist and was able to provide detailed information, and after the sketch was done, hundreds of tips hit police phone lines, and Paul Benardo was one of the suspects. So in the 90s, DNA testing was slowly getting more advanced, and so the police took DNA samples from all the suspects. They approached Paul Benardo for questioning, as he was a suspect, but with all the charm in the world, smooth, he cooperated, and he offered his DNA even before the officers asked for it, took their samples, and they let him go. For 2 years, Paul Benardo's DNA sample sat before anyone could hear anything. Well, in October of 1990, Paul Benardo moved in with the Homolka family to be with Carla. So he moved from Scarborough to St. Catharines. And they loved him. He was charming, entertaining, and above all else, he treated Carla as a queen. But little did the Homolka family know the tragedy, well, it's just around the corner. It's 29th December 1990.
Okay. Well, that's so cute. Too close up.
And it's Christmas at the Homolka residence. Everybody's having a good time. Carla's parents at the time are asleep, and Tammy Homolka, the youngest the Homolka sisters, was hanging out with none other than Ken and Barbie. They were all drinking and just having a good time. Just to put everything into perspective, Tammy was only 15 years old at the time. Her parents had allowed her to have a couple of drinks, not too much. Paul handed her a drink she had never tried before, but she was curious to try it. And she had one too many. Till next thing you know, allegedly, Tammy's on the floor with a lump in her throat. They take her to St. Catharines Hospital, where she was pronounced dead. She was only 15 years old, man. She had her whole life ahead of her. Everybody wrote it off as an accident, but the truth is, it was a setup. After Tammy's death, it took Carla Homoka 6 months to completely mourn her sister, before she started pressuring her parents to go forth with the already planned wedding between her and Paul. As you would have guessed it, her parents folded, and on the 29th of June 1991, Ken and Barbie would get their dream wedding, and it was grand. people would question why they got married so quickly after Tammy's death. But hey, the show must go on. The wedding was beautiful, an expensive experience of sort, is what I saw. Paul was dressed in an expensive suit. Carla was in a Disney-inspired puffy shoulder dress that was nowhere near cheap. There was a horse carriage and an over-the-top banquet dinner. This was a wedding that both Paul and Carla wanted, and everybody was happy for him.
Hi, Carla. Hi, Paul. Best of luck. I love you both. Paul is the best thing that could ever happen to Carla.
Their parents were happy. Their guests were happy. It just looked like a match made in heaven. However, something very disturbing happened on the day of the wedding. June the 15th, 1991. A 14-year-old girl by the name of Leslie Mahaffey goes missing. Apparently, Leslie was going through a rebellious stage in life. That made her parents give her a very tight curfew. The deal was, if she came home late, no one was going to open the door for her. Well, on the night of June 15th, 1991, well, she came late, hanging out with friends. She got home past her curfew, and she didn't have a way to get into the house. She walked to a nearby payphone to call her friends to ask if she could spend the night at her place, and the friend declined. So Leslie Mahaffey decided to walk back to her parents' home, bang on the door till someone opens. Allegedly, someone, a man in a car, offered her a ride home, and that was the last time anyone saw her, till the 29th of the same month. And the truth is, she wasn't really all together. Let me explain. Lake Gibson, Niagara, a canoeist by the name of Bill Gurkle was just trying to enjoy his day. You know, a few cold beers, splash around in the water, enjoy the warm Canadian summer. But what he saw haunts him to this very day. While he was paddling, he saw some concrete blocks in the water with some blood, so he decides to investigate further, and with his paddle pushing on the block, he found a human foot. After the police showed up, they found the rest of the body parts. And sadly, from dental records, they found out that it was indeed the lost Leslie Mahaffey. But locals said it had to be someone new, someone who wasn't familiar with the land, because everybody knows that during the summertime, the water level at Lake Gibson drops a couple of feet, so if someone was trying to hide something, it was eventually going to be found.
Entered into an investigation of the discovery of what appeared to be human remains on the shoreline of Lake Gibson.
Let me pose a question to you. Isn't it weird that some charming individual rolls up into town and on the day of his wedding, a girl is fished out of the lake? And it seems that the job was done by someone who was not familiar with the area. Hey, think about it. Kristen French, a 15-year-old girl from St. Catharines, a straight-A student from Holy Cross High School, and missing. 9 months after Leslie Mahaffey's body was found, but this time it was indeed an abduction. While Kristen was walking home from school, a woman in a Camaro stops her in front of a church with a map asking for directions. Kristen, disarmed by the lost woman's kind words, decides to help her, and she leans in to help her. A man from behind with a knife grabs her. She tries to put up a fight, but she was no match, and the man pushes her into the backseat of the car, and not before dropping a couple of personal items and her shoe during the struggle. And then, they sped off.
15-year-old Kristen French, a high school athlete and a straight-A student, was abducted from the front lawn of this church near her home this afternoon.
French was last seen at her Holy Cross High School in St. Catharines.
After Kristen French was abducted, over 2,200 people came together to look for her, and they named themselves Project Green Ribbon. At this point, the parents just wanted their little girl back, and they still had hope. She was alive.
We just want her back. I know she wants to come back too, but somehow or other she can't get back.
Well, until this happened. 30th April 1992, 2 weeks after Kristen disappeared, a body is found on a deserted road. The body had no hair and she was laying in a fetal position. Upon further investigation, it was indeed Kristen French. The police didn't want a panic to ensue, but the locals were scared for their children. They had a mass killer on their hands.
We don't feel safe anymore. You know, you just don't. It's just, you know, ask yourself, how did this happen? Why? And